Hey guys, and welcome to our first episode of our second season of Blessed Are the Geek. Hope you guys are liking this. Please don't forget to come join our Facebook group where we have lots of discussions and things. We're kind of picking up some speed there. If you guys want to see any topics covered here in the future, if you want to talk about your topic, if you want to talk about your fandom, your hobby, your job, whatever you want to talk about, let us know. Come join the ranks of the geekdom. You can send me a private message or you can tag us on Twitter at Blessed Geekcast. Finding me on Facebook, Chris with a K Price, is probably the best way to get in contact with me, but do whatever you see is fit. We try and go around different places. We also take email at blessedgeekcast@gmail.com. So in this episode, we sit down with Wes, who's a great friend of mine. I've known him since college, late high school, and he's really into Star Wars, and I used to be really into Star Wars as a teenager, and so I thought this was a great opportunity for me to talk to somebody about something that I actually knew quite a bit about. There's also some really cool stuff that I've thrown into the description for this episode. It's the first time we've done that, so I'm going to try and kind of keep that up as time moves forward. We got some great links to some of the episodes of a podcast Wes likes to listen to. Also a link to a podcast that Wes actually hosts, all about SEC, Southern Eastern Conference, Southeastern Conference football, college football. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode, our first episode of our second season. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. No, I'm just kidding. It's YouTube. Different thing. But anyway, without further ado, let's get started. All right, so this is the first episode of our second season of Blessed Are the Geek. We're back with our other format here where we sit down and talk with everyday people about their favorite fandoms, hobbies, and jobs. And today we have Wes Miller.
What's up?
We're talking about
Star Wars.
Star Wars.
Nothing but Star Wars.
So why don't we start with kind of like what you do and who you are.
What I do and who I am. Man,
you'd like to share that with the internet.
Subject. Wow.
It's not a deep question for me.
Yeah.
It's very surface.
Wow. So, like you said, I'm Wes, and I am a contractor on the Air Force Base here, and I do IT work. That is what I do. As far as who I am, my family, have my wife Jamie. We've been married for almost 8 years, and we have 2 kids, Liam and Holden. They are 6 and 4, about to be 7 and 5. And they are lots of fun, and it's been a lot of fun getting them into Star Wars as well.
And every night when they go to bed, they stand on the bottom of the steps and go, "So long,
yes,
farewell."
Yes, they do that.
That'd be pretty great.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Yeah.
This is me in a nutshell. Help! How did I get in this nutshell?
Sounds painful.
That's always my favorite part from Austin Powers is the... Anyway.
Yeah.
So I gave you a list of questions, and I think it's the first time I've ever given any of our guests like questions ahead of time. So you're making me structure this a little bit.
Yeah. I'm just a weirdo like that, I guess. I like to have like the plan before I get there. So
well, you also host a podcast, and yours is a little bit more structured.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. So, in addition to Star Wars, I also enjoy college football, more specifically SEC football. I'm a Georgia Bulldogs fan, so that's kind of where that stems from. So, me and a couple other friends, we get together during football season about once a week and discuss the games, news, and stuff like that. And I wasn't going to do the plug until the end of the show.
Right,
but hey,
right. Well,
while we're here,
yeah,
so,
sure.
Pigskins and Pageantry is the name of our show, and if you'd like to check that out, just look us up. We're on iTunes, any podcasting platform. So yeah, check us out.
For what it's worth, I've listened to several of your episodes knowing zero about SEC football or any sort of. Every time the football game is on, I have to nudge Jen and go like, "How does the scoring work again?" Like,
what is that meme? It's like, I say, those strapping young lads out there with those
they've
helmets.
kicked the ball.
Yes.
He has it now. It deserves a round of applause.
Yeah.
It's my favorite IT crowd. Anyway, I was saying that I've listened to it a couple times, and even though I don't understand everything that's going on in you guys' podcast, it's enjoyable to listen to. So,
well, thanks.
If you like SEC football, if you like any sort of especially college football, you should go check out Pigskins and Pageantry, because if I can't understand it but I enjoy listening to it, it must be even better if you know what they're talking about.
Well, I appreciate that, and we just have a lot of fun talking about it. So.
We were actually planning on talking about this at the end of the podcast.
Yes.
This just goes to show how much I throw preparation.
Well, honestly, so the reason that I am structured is because I'm the exact same way, and if I'm not, I'm going to be all over the place. So speaking of which, since you made an IT crowd reference, so a while back we watched the episode where they're questioning everything that he does, and the word that he says is disabled. Every time. And so now that I'm at work and I'm sitting there and dealing with users' accounts and stuff, and every time I have to disable them, that word pops into my head. I'm like, disabled.
I'm disabled. Leg disabled.
So yes,
that might be the best episode of the TV show. I think that one's called The Workouting.
It was. Yeah, I don't remember the name of it. It was a good one though.
If you haven't seen IT Crowd and you like funny stuff, definitely 100% check that out. So, how did you get into Star Wars?
So, actually, this might come as a surprise, but I actually did not grow up a Star Wars fan. I actually did not watch Star Wars until senior year in high school, I think. I know, crazy, right? So senior year in high school, I don't even remember what it was. It was some kind of event or some kind of after-school thing or whatever that was going on. But anyway, they were playing Attack of the Clones in the gym.
Jeez, I'm sorry.
Don't go there. We're not there yet. But so they were playing that, and I had I had not seen any Star Wars. I mean, I had seen like little clips here and there, but hadn't really watched them. So we watched most of that movie. I don't know if we got finished with it there, but I was just really impressed and thought, how cool that was.
How great Hayden Christensen's acting is.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. So a friend of mine who was in class with me was like, hey, man, you need to, over the Christmas break, you need to borrow the original trilogy. Yeah. And so he let me...
Because it's not like this. Don't let this...
so he let me borrow the old school... He let me borrow the VHS original trilogy. This was like 2002, so that's not that odd back then anyway. But not only that, but it was the original.
Yeah,
so not special edition. I'm talking like when the Death Star explodes, it looks like a firecracker goes...
Right.
Not like a ring comes out. And anything.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of changes that have been made throughout the Star Wars releases that even now are hard to keep track of.
Yeah, and they continue. So it's like they'll do the special edition, and then later, especially under Lucas, it seemed that later it was like, we'll do the special edition this time.
Right. The extra special edition.
Even better this time. So
I wonder what his mindset was for all the changes he made. Do you think that Lucas was... Do you think Lucas is somebody who's just not satisfied until he gets his perfect vision, and we didn't have the technology for that back then, and that's why every time we get a re-release of Star Wars, we get something new added, whether it be blinking in the Ewoks or more of the sand troopers out on the desert or something.
Jedi rocks.
Right.
I don't know. I definitely think that's part of it. So just listening to him talk about not just Star Wars, but any Star Wars fans out there will probably be familiar with THX 1138, and that is another movie that Lucas was somewhat lacking in technology at the time to tell his complete story that he wanted. I think as technology has evolved, he's taken advantage of that opportunity to go back and kind of retell it maybe more fully, like he would prefer.
What's the elevator pitch for THX 1138?
What's the what now?
What's the elevator pitch like? What's that? A quick, very
quick
summary?
So it's just real quick. It's like an Orwellian futuristic society, and these people are all given these pills that basically suppress all emotion and stuff like that. They're basically worker bees in this underground, bleached white society. And Robert Duvall is actually the lead actor in that. So yeah, it's if you like that kind of thing, into the Orwellian future type stuff, I would encourage it. I really like it, but I also enjoyed it just from the standpoint of being able to kind of get more familiar with George Lucas's other works. That's actually a full-length feature version of a student film that he made when he was in school at USC.
Gotcha.
So,
the premise of that actually reminds me, I was looking it up real quick, reminds me of a game that we got a preview of last year at E3. I'm not sure if it released yet or not. I don't think it has. It's called We Happy Few, where the game is kind of set in, like BioShock, like, it's like that steampunkish sort of time or whatever, and the characters in, your character in the game quits taking his pills, and so then he becomes a downer, and then he kind of sees the world around them and how people aren't eating cake, they're eating a rat or something like that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So if you like that concept, We Happy Few was, if that sounds familiar, it's probably because you remember that trailer from last year, 2 years ago.
That is very similar, yeah.
So anyway, so he lent you the Star Wars trilogy to take home.
Yeah, so pretty much at that point I was hooked. I think maybe just because Episode 2 is the first one that I saw, I think I actually bought the DVD because it was the most readily available at the time, whatever time that was. So yeah, I got into it, and then went back, since I had time. So we watched the movie Attack of the Clones right after the DVD came out. So I basically had 3 years to catch up before Revenge of the Sith came out. So basically became fully obsessed, and I was that high schooler sitting in front of the computer reading the Star Wars databank, trying to learn everything that I could. Nerd alert.
Right.
Nerd alert. So,
but when we were talking about this, since then you've kind of dove into the visual media of Star Wars, but not so much like the published material or video games.
Right. So, video games to a point. So, one video game that really kind of impressed me was the original Battlefront.
Sure.
That one was good, but definitely Battlefront 2 when it came out for the original Xbox.
And that came out like a few weeks ago.
So no, I'm actually talking. Yeah, I see what you did there. So yeah, gosh, I don't even remember what year that was, but it was Xbox Live enabled, whereas one was not. Yeah, those were a lot of fun. I really enjoyed those. And then when The Force Unleashed came out, have you ever had a chance to play any of those?
I have not.
So I heard your podcast. You were talking about Legos, and you enjoy the open world kind of interaction, smashing stuff and everything.
Adventure
right?
stuff, yeah.
So I won't say that Force Unleashed is completely like that, but definitely it's environment interactive. You can pick stuff up, throw it with the Force, and
that's cool.
Things like that. So
and that was for which system?
I played it for the Xbox. I believe those two, Unleashed and Unleashed 2, were 360.
Gotcha.
So I've actually since loaded them because they're bestseller. So because of that, they're available for download on the Xbox One. So I've downloaded them, and my son is actually able to play them now. So
nice.
Yeah.
Is he liking it and appreciating it?
He does. Actually, he kind of got into the Star Wars gaming through the Disney Infinity.
Oh, okay.
So he
buying all of the
little characters. Yeah. So he and Holden, my daughter, they switch back and forth between Anakin and Ahsoka and Luke and Leia and stuff like that. So yeah.
So what memories do you have since, I guess, high school of really being into Star Wars? Like, what's something that kind of speaks to you when you think about it?
Right. So high school and college are kind of foggy for me. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
Just kidding. But seriously though, memories about
it's all that drug smuggling that's going on.
That's it.
Making the Kessel Run here in Warner Robins, right?
Less than 12 parsecs.
Right.
It's really impressive. Yeah. As far as memories go, probably one of my first really good memories of Star Wars was when Episode 3 came out, and by that point, I was fully into it, and all my friends knew that I was fully into it. So I actually ended up getting tickets for pretty much everybody, all my friends at that time, and we took up like the whole front row of the theater.
Nice.
So
that really tells that you were in high school at the time, because you were at the front row of the movie theater.
Yeah.
And nowadays we're old people were like, oh,
I know, right? Well, so not the front. So it was
Right.
the front of the second portion
gotcha.
there. But yeah, that was an interesting midnight premiere because, because I remember at one point these people were being crazy, and then at one point some guy came down in front of us, and he was like, "Okay, we're going to play a game of Simon Says." And it starts
This
going
is during
like
the film?
No, this is
Oh.
before it starts. So, people are trying to entertain themselves.
Oh, you're talking about the movie theater people that.
Yeah,
came
well, no,
down.
yeah, we're all sitting there front row. The movie hasn't
I
started
thought just
yet.
like some guy in a trench coat came down and
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
now we're playing Simon Says.
Yeah, but we're all like, dude, just shut up.
Right,
just
right.
go back to your seat. So
Nobody asked you to entertain this group.
I think that was probably my first experience with crazy Star Wars fans.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, or just, I won't say crazy, fully devoted. That's
Sure.
a better
That's
better term.
definitely I think every fandom, if it exists, it definitely has one or two people that are like gung ho.
Yeah, although I will say that when I stood in line to go to that movie, I did have a couple of lightsabers with me.
Oh.
But my friends looked at me funny, so I put them back in the car.
Oh,
So I was
When
like,
when the most recent film, The Last Jedi, came out, several theaters aren't allowing you to bring in lightsabers anymore.
yeah. So it's, I mean, I guess look at it how you will, but it is kind of a shame. But with all the stuff that's been going on lately, you can't be too careful, really.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Well, plus with anyway, that's a whole different
yeah,
topic. So
yeah, a different podcast.
Right. Was there anything? I was just thinking a minute ago. Was there anything like in watching Star Wars? Was there anything specifically that jumped out to you that was like, Wes, this is the voice of God. Star Wars is your new fandom. What was the thing that like reached out to you? It was Lightspeed, wasn't it?
Yeah, yes, it was Lightspeed. Yeah. Oh man, so I think probably just in my initial watching of Star Wars. So I have a pretty strong faith, I guess you'd say, but that was one thing in watching Star Wars that really just kind of struck me, that even though it's not like I guess traditional faith or whatever, it's definitely a lot of the same principles and almost allegorical, if you will, I guess, way to look at it. So, definitely a lot of that stuff, trusting in the Force and, Yoda's whole thing about, do or do not, there's no try, that philosophy of just applying yourself. And I don't know, I guess it was sort of oddly familiar to me in a way, like it was sort of just resonated.
I see.
Those themes, and I think that's probably one thing that did pull me in.
Gotcha.
I would say.
Your father was a half human cyborg, right? That's what really like.
Father,
man, this makes so much sense.
Father's days are really awkward. No, I'm saying.
Right.
When he sits over there and I'm giving him his gift and he's like, yeah. So
Thanks for the other tie. Appreciate that.
right, another one of these.
That's pretty good. So how do you feel? So this is a real like spoiler.
Wait,
heavy.
is this like a therapy session? You're like, how does that make you feel?
So how does it make you? So this is a spoiler heavy podcast. How do you feel about The Last Jedi?
Well, so the Blu-ray is about to come out, so I guess if it's really spoilers, people just aren't really
No,
paying
you
attention.
don't care that much.
But how do I feel about it?
Yeah.
So I really liked it. I think, and I even wrote a blog about it. I think that it might be, I don't know if it's my favorite Star Wars movie, but it's up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's very different. I think for me, the first time. So let me back up. The first time that I watched the movie, I sat there and with like this blank look on my face and walked out like, what have I just seen?
Yeah. Huh.
Because it's just so completely different. So
Yeah.
if you're a fan and you're used to the first 7, it's just completely different. So your mind's like,
Right.
So I like the fact in going back, it's almost kind of like, let's say that you have a musical artist that you really like and they put out a new album. And maybe the first time you listen to it, you're like, man, I'm not really so sure if I like that or not. But then you listen to it 10 times and you're like, yeah, I really like this. I'm, getting into it now. So I went back and I watched it a second time, and I think a third, and then I think a fourth time. I think I actually watched it 4 times total.
I think at that point we call that Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah. It's not as bad as episode 3. I went to go see that one 8 times in the theater. Man. Yeah, once in the dog.
I'll trying to like it like the whole time. Like I will.
no. So
this makes sense.
I was full obsession then. So
okay.
And it was one of those things where high school, college age, where it's like. You see the movie and then you find friends. They're like, "Oh man, I haven't seen it yet." You're like, "Oh, you haven't seen it yet? Let's go." So
change your life.
Exactly, just like the macchiato. But yeah. So what were we talking about?
We were just quoting the Robot Chicken Star Wars special.
Oh, Last Jedi. Yeah. So
yeah.
See what I'm saying about the whole getting off on a tangent?
Sure,
stuff?
sure.
Yeah. So. The Last Jedi, yeah. So it challenged me as a fan, and I think that I like that.
That's an interesting way to say that.
In order for Star Wars to grow, you can't just have the same rehash of the same story. And I love The Force Awakens, but you could argue that it's kind of a rehash of A New Hope in some ways, as far as
The Force Awakens, yeah. Well, I really feel like The Last Jedi was, in a lot of ways, reminiscent of Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. Well, so I guess in that sense that the bad guys are kind of victorious at the end, kind of.
Well, there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
Like how Rey is training with a Jedi Master on a strange planet, and
right.
At the end of the film, you have
the Jedi Master
mentor dies. The
Jedi Master, it's weird.
They come back to Hoth.
Yeah. so Luke has he has an interesting arc in the story in that. So if you want to compare it to Empire Strikes Back, Yoda, while he's this crazy little
right.
little frog guy, he's still fully devoted to the Force and very willing to teach and all that stuff. So it's kind of interesting to see that difference in arcs where Luke, because of his failure, has decided that, I'm going to cut myself off from the Force.
Right.
And his own redemption in the story. Whereas, I think we all just kind of painted him out to be, this... I heard one podcast call it a fully baked character. Like, what we saw in the previous, movies that's him. Where that doesn't make any sense.
I see.
So are you the same person now that you were 3 years ago?
No.
Yeah. So all of us change and we go through different things. We evolve in our thinking and stuff like that. So it kind of makes sense.
No, absolutely.
In some ways. So
I never thought about it that way. It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, I kind of liked that. Although the first time, so when he takes the lightsaber and he throws it, it's kind of like that irreverent, like,
right,
what has he just done type of thing. And like I said, when I watched it the first time, there were a couple moments where I sat back and I was like, I don't know if I like that.
Yeah.
But then I think the more I watched it and the more I kind of got used to it, I did like it.
So you don't think they made mistakes with like Carrie Fisher's almost death scene and Luke dying for some reason at the end of the film, and
so
the whole side story Mission Impossible thing that.
So I'm actually glad that we're talking about this because it's kind of making me relive some of this stuff because it's some stuff that I had forgotten about. But when Carrie Fisher, when Leia, when the bridge explodes and Akbar dies sadly, and everyone's sucked out into space, immediately I thought, that's it.
There it goes.
They're out. That's how she goes.
Neatly wrapped little package.
Yeah, that's it. And then all of a sudden, the hand starts to move, the eye opens, and just the little gliding back to the ship type of thing. And I was completely surprised. I did think it was a little cheesy the first time I saw it, but in listening to Ryan Johnson talk about it and her Force abilities, he was saying it's really not that impressive if you think about it because technically she's in zero gravity,
right?
So all she has to do is through the Force have the tiniest little push,
right?
And
very little wisp.
She's headed back to the ship. So I don't know. So
I suppose
that was interesting. But if you in watching the rest of the movie and the exchange that she has with Luke at the end, then you realize that's why. that's why she couldn't die then, because that exchange needed to happen.
Sure.
So I was glad that they were able to do that, the whole Luke Leia moment, even if he wasn't really there.
Right.
It was good.
There were some weird aspects about that, about how he like could pick stuff up and physically interact with things, yet
Right.
he still wasn't there.
Right.
Do you think Snoke was using the same trick?
I don't know. That's something to think about.
Yeah.
Will we see Snoke again? I heard Andy Serkis talking about it, and I think he's under the impression that Snoke is done. However, if they went back and did, like some kind of prequel thing, he said he would be open to that, which I thought it was a great character, and I was shocked that they got rid of him.
Well, apparently he's got
so
more
easily.
meat to his character and story in some comics somewhere.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, so that would be interesting to find or to follow, because I would like to know, and I think most Star Wars fans would like to know. As a matter of fact, that was one of the big reactions when people are like, "Who is this guy? He's just dead." So
maybe Rian Johnson purposely wanted to do that so that people could write in, like you could have almost like a published character biography rather than a video biography. You know what I'm saying? Like.
Yeah.
Where, like, people could have the choice then to build who he was as a character through novels and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that could definitely be it. And almost like, so we're kind of, I don't know if spoiled is the right word, but a lot of stuff that was originally kind of mystery in the Star Wars universe has been explained to us. Midi-chlorians and, all these different aspects that were once kind of like, I wonder how they did that.
Right.
Now we know because of other stuff. So it's kind of cool in one aspect to have something that's just mystery, like, oh man, I wonder who that guy was.
But at this point, there's so little of that in the Star Wars universe.
Well, yeah, because it's everywhere now.
Or at least the explanations are.
Yeah. So that's one thing that made me like the movie. Another thing that made me like the movie is that, so if Kylo is right and Rey really is nobody, and who knows whether he was telling the truth or not, that's an interesting thing to think about. That
how would he know? Also,
right, and maybe he was lying. Maybe he's just trying to mess with her head. But,
sure.
That's an interesting thing to think about. That maybe she is nobody, and maybe I guess it's when we first saw Star Wars, we didn't know who Luke was, and so to us, he was a nobody too.
Right.
And so I don't know. Maybe it's that type of situation. Maybe we'll find out more about her later. Maybe she won't be a nobody. Maybe she'll have some lineage. I don't know. But it would be kind of cool if she was a nobody and just kind of had a story all her own.
Sure. Do you think they'll wrap up Rey's story in the last movie? Or in this next movie, I should say.
I don't know. So, there's the whole thing with her parents selling her for drinking money or whatever.
Sure.
And
space heroin.
Yes, and then as you can see the spaceship flying away, it's just slowly drifting to the right.
Right. There was an explosion that day. That's what happened to your parents.
That's right. So I don't know. I don't know if they'll tell it or not. I think that would be cool. I would like that loose end tied up, I think. But if they don't, it's not going to be one of those things where I'm like, oh man. So there's that for her. One thing, like I said, and this kind of goes back to being challenged as a fan. But Luke learns the lesson of humility in this movie because he's gone through the thing where he's failed. He's tried to teach these students. He even says in the movie that he just got so enamored with the fact that he was Luke Skywalker. The great, Luke Skywalker in his hubris, as he calls it.
Sure.
He thought that he was invincible. So I kind of like moments like that in movies where it's like a lesson that we all can learn. And even from someone as great as Luke Skywalker, and arguably one of the greatest characters in storytelling.
Sure.
So learning that lesson of humility, I thought that was pretty cool.
I wonder if Mark Hamill had any voice in that. Because
not really.
Oh, really?
So,
because I was just saying I could see that being something that Mark Hamill had to deal with.
No, not actually. So, so when Mark read the script for Luke in this movie, he said, "I fundamentally disagree with everything that you've written for this character.
Thank you. Have a nice day, good sir.
Yeah. Only it was probably more like, I can't believe this.
Right.
But something about Tashi Station too.
Right.
But so he said he disagreed with that because he believed that, so he goes back to when Luke had the opportunity to strike his father down, and he chooses, no, I'm going to throw the lightsaber away. I mean, he's just that strong character who's going to choose the right thing, right? In his mind, that's who Luke was. That's who he always was going to be. And so I think it took a little coaxing, but after he and Rian Johnson talked about it for a long time, I think he finally kind of accepted that, and I think he did a great job.
Sure.
In portraying the character, even though he disagreed with it. And he actually had to go back on Twitter and talk about that later, because people were like, saying how they were bashing Rian Johnson and his treatment of the character. And Mark Hamill, he was like, look, I know I said this about the character back then, but I will say that though I disagreed, Rian has gone on to tell a great story.
Sure.
And one with lots of good lessons and stuff like that. So it was cool to see his take on that. So, and he has a star now in Hollywood.
Yeah, I saw that the other day. He just got it.
Yeah.
And the first thing he said is, "They spelled my name correctly."
Yeah.
I guess he has a problem with people giving him 2 M's or 1 L or something.
I could see how that would be a problem. Yeah. And did you see George Lucas and his? So he was one of the speakers there. It was really funny listening to George talk, because
it's always listening. Personally, I think it's funny to hear him talk all the time.
Oh yeah, Mark and him. He's a great
he's still character. Like an awkward teenager, whatever he does. I'm just like the chicken salad.
Moisture farmer. Yeah. But he said he was looking for a naive farm boy who didn't know exactly what was going on in the world, and he found the perfect thing in Mark. All these like backhanded compliments, and I guess when you've known somebody as long as George and Mark have known each other, it's I guess you can do that. But it was just really funny to listen to.
Well, how could he know that hyperspace isn't like dust and crops?
That's true, boy. Yeah.
It's so funny too to see how much Mark Hamill embraces his character and embraces the community and embraces all of it. Whereas on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have Harrison Ford, who's just like, "No, get out of here! I don't really want to deal with that today." And
Have you watched many interviews with Harrison Ford?
I've seen like 1 or 2, but that's like how he talks, isn't it?
Yeah, he's a really odd dude. Again, in the movies he seems fairly normal, but he just he does that thing where he sort of sits back and mumbles and has his earring, and you're like, where did that come from?
Right. Of all things.
Yeah, you're like 80 years old, but you
were also Indiana Jones and Han Solo. Like an earring is the last thing I expected you to have.
Exactly. Yeah. So, it's cool to see. One thing about Harrison Ford is in The Force Awakens, I don't know if you've seen this interview, where they were asking him about when he was hired to get the job, and he came and stepped on the set of the Millennium Falcon for the first time. And they were like, Harrison, did you get emotional when you got on the set? And without missing a beat, he looked at him and said, "I got paid." And that just cracked me up. I was like, that is a Harrison Ford thing to say.
Yeah.
So
I remember one time seeing a GIF recently of somebody asked him at like a convention or something, like, "Are you excited to see your portrayal in Force Awakens, like the most recent film?" And he was like, "No, not really. No, I don't."
So do you watch Bad Lip Reading?
I've seen a couple of them. Yeah.
So one of the best parts about that is that I think it's The Last Jedi, or maybe no, it's Force Awakens. Yeah, Force Awakens Bad Lip Reading version. Mark Hamill voices Han Solo.
That's hilarious. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it is great. So it's spot on. But yeah, Mark Hamill's been great with the community, and he always goes to these, events and
well, he's like that with his Joker character too. Like he doesn't like doing it anymore, but somebody says like, "Can I hear you do the Joker?" And
I think one time he did like an argument between the Joker and I don't think it was Luke. I think it was some other character. I think it was another voice character that he's done. But it was just really funny to hear his back and forth, going back and forth with the voices.
From what I understand, any kind of like outtake from a voice actor is like comedy gold.
Yeah,
That's what I understand. Like the behind the scenes of like Fairly Odd Parents and SpongeBob, the things that they say are just outrageous. I would love to get a copy of any of that.
Did you? So Mark Hamill was in the movie Big Red One about the soldiers in World War II who went on that campaign through Italy and all that.
No, I did not know that.
So he was in that movie, but the only reason I know that is because did you ever play the video game Call of Duty Big Red One?
No.
It was, I think, at the same time Call of Duty 3 came out Call of Duty 2 came out for the 360. That one came out for the original Xbox, I believe. Anyway, he's a voice in that.
Oh, gotcha. He does a lot of voice acting stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I have somebody message me for work stuff.
It's all good.
So let's get into some other. I mean, people know that Star Wars is all about the movies and the ships and stuff. What about some of the other media that people may not know about? The published books, the TV specials, the video games, that sort of thing. Have you what kind of things have you delved into there?
So if anyone has never seen the Star Wars Christmas special, I would recommend that if you're a hardcore fan, you watch it one time. Because after that one time, you'll be like, never again. But you can say that you watched it. So
I'm a pretty big fan of Star Wars, and I've made it about halfway through.
Yeah. So there's this really awkward part in the middle of it where I think it's Chewie's dad or something gets this video box or whatever it is, and it's like some dancer or whatever, and it's like really awkward. She's dancing, suggestively and stuff like that. And so I'm like sitting there watching it, and I'm watching it with the kids,
right?
And I'm like, fast forward,
right?
And, it was for TV, so I know it's not really, it can't be that bad, but at the same time, it's awkward. So I'm fast forwarding through it. So I got through that part, and after that, it was a little better. But it's an experience. I'm telling you.
There was one thing I remember seeing as a kid at one point. That was on TV, and we had recorded it, and I watched, I burned through it on our DVR 8 different times. But it was a bunch of fan content of a mixture of live action and animated stuff. And I can't remember what that was, and I want to say it was a special.
Well, so
advertised or whatever.
There is some animated content in the Christmas special, and one of them is
but.
So this is like a fan created
completely different thing, yeah.
Gotcha. So as far as I know, I believe that is the first time we ever see Boba Fett is in the animated portion.
Okay, hang on. Because somebody that may listen may have to speak up, because we did a Star Wars trivia night recently, and I asked that question.
Yeah.
And I had done my research into that question.
Right.
And one thing I noticed with our trivia people is if it's our regular trivia shows, history, science, whatever.
Right.
If you're wrong, people are like, "Oh well, whatever. I thought I would have got it. Whatever.
I thought I was right."
Right. Oh. But if I'm wrong on one of our nerdy trivia things, somebody will let me know every time. No, apparently the first time Boba Fett was ever seen by the public in any fashion was at a Star Wars parade that happened a few weeks or a few days before the Christmas special aired.
So we're not talking about on media content. We're just talking about seeing, period.
Apparently, the first time he's ever seen is in some parade. Somebody corrected me on that one time.
Wow.
So
that is about as nitpicky as it gets. But
yeah, it is.
Hey,
but yes, the Christmas special is the first time we technically, as a mass public, see Boba Fett.
And as far as I know, that live airing was the only time it was ever aired on TV.
Really?
Yep, because it was so bad.
Yeah. George Lucas is like, can we just burn this?
So
grab my cigarette over here.
That's right. So now the only way you can watch it is on YouTube or whatever. So
if you care to, right.
I'm trying to think of other stuff. So I am admittedly not really a Star Wars book reader. Not that I don't like books, but I just never really got into the novels of Star Wars.
Maybe I'll pick up here for a second.
Yeah, because you've read a few, right?
I've read a lot as a teenager. When I guess so, I was homeschooled, right? Mm-hmm. And we entered like
me too, actually.
Were you really
through 8th grade?
Oh, I was like off and on like here, but mostly for the majority I was homeschooled. But in one city we lived in, our local library had like a program where if you read so many books, you got free pizza or something.
Nice.
So it was also like an effort for my mom to get me to stop playing video games.
Right.
She's like, well, maybe if you just read one book. That's all I want from you ever in life is to read a single book.
And pizza.
Right. But at that point, I found out that there was this, that Star Wars novelizations were a thing at that point. Mm-hmm. And that's when I first read the Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn.
Yep.
And I read a lot of the Apprentice series, which all took place in the Jedi Academy just before the events of Episode 1. Which, as a kid, I really liked because you explore the Jedi Academy more and a lot of the people on the Council and other Jedis and stuff, because I feel like you don't get a lot of that.
Right.
And there's something about the Jedi Council and like who the Jedi are as like pre-Episode 1 that fascinates me. Because after Episode 1, just kind of like goes down the toilet a little bit.
They're arrogant.
Yeah, right. But I read those, and the Thrawn trilogy takes place just after the events of the third one, Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, and so I know that Thrawn is a character. So also, I did not watch when they first came out, Clone Wars or Rebels. However, I am catching up, and I know that Thrawn is a character from the EU that they have thrown in.
Yeah, the extended universe,
yeah.
Which is all the novelizations that came out before Disney's merger and are now considered non-canonical.
Right. Well, so Disney did it really smart. So when they bought Star Wars, they rebranded all of those previous novelizations or novels and called them Legends.
That's right.
So it's not that they're not true, but if you choose to believe them in your own mind, that can be your headcanon.
Gotcha.
But it's not official.
Right.
It's kind of like, the Legends of the Old West.
Right.
It may or may not have happened. So.
Disney's like, well, if you want to believe it.
And that way they can continue selling them, too.
Right.
So it's not like you just, shut it off. Oh, no more of this book.
But
you
also,
just label it Legends.
But also, like, the mouse gets to dictate what is and isn't canon
right.
or something.
Which really is a blessing, though, because it really kind of got out of control there as far as, just...
There was a lot of content that was coming.
Well, there was like 5 levels of canon. There was like George Lucas canon. There was novel canon. There was this canon, that canon, and you had to like add them all up to figure out what was really right and what was really not.
It was like this wibbly bobble.
Yeah.
Blob of...
So to me, even as a fan who had gotten into it pretty far, it was somewhat confusing a lot of times because I'm like, I don't really know what's going on with this stuff. So what's canon and what's not. So at least now we have like a official,
like a roadmap kind of thing.
Yeah.
So Timothy Zahn was really the first published author of Star Wars. And I went and saw him he was at a convention I went to. I had him sign my Thrawn trilogy.
Yeah.
And when he was there, nobody was at his table, so I was just sitting there chatting him up for like an hour or something.
Wow.
And at one point, I think he said that he didn't approach Lucas, right? Like, they approached him, like, hey, well, you want to write a Star Wars book? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, sure. And I asked him, like, what were your rules set down at that point? Like, because if you were to take over the mantle of a big franchise like that, there has to be rules, right? And basically, Timothy Zahn said at the time, like, he just couldn't create anything that was already there. Or, he couldn't destroy anything that was already there. So he couldn't, like, kill off Han Solo.
Right.
And that's kind of it. Which led him to create the character of Mara Jade, who was sort of like a villain in the Thrawn trilogy, who ends up becoming Luke Skywalker's wife. Mm-hmm. In some way or fashion. I don't know. But she was working for the Empire. She was working for Thrawn initially.
Right.
I think she acts as a spy.
So instead of killing people off, he just added people. So
Right.
That's pretty cool. It's interesting to see. And like I said, even though I haven't read a lot of these, I have listened to a lot of podcasts, and sometimes they'll have the authors on their shows, and they'll talk and stuff like that. And they'll just talk about the freedoms that they were given and the restrictions that they were given, and kind of like you said, hey, you can do this, you can you can't kill anyone, or you can do this or whatever. So it's kind of cool to hear the behind the scenes of that stuff.
Well, that even the destroying things that were already done that also related to other authors' work. Mm-hmm. So like Zahn couldn't come in and unwrite something that another author had done or in their universe or whatever.
Right.
But if somebody's looking to get into the Legends or extended universe or novelizations, Timothy Zahn is a fantastic starting point. Because not only is there that Thrawn trilogy, he even writes, he co-writes Tales of the Bounty Hunters, which talk about, that was what I was like really into when I was into Star Wars, because I was into Star Wars since I was a kid. Like I've always been around it.
Right.
So the bounty hunters that were present in Empire Strikes Back for like all of 3 minutes.
Right.
I like obsessed
all
over
their backstories and everything.
Yeah. So you get their backstories in Tales of the Bounty Hunters. Then there's a Tales of Jabba's Palace, again, that he co-writes. And they're all like small chapters that's like, oh, this one's about Bosk, and this one's about,
IG-88.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about video games? You said earlier Battlefront 2. And
so those two, and then the Force Unleashed games. Actually, so I don't think the Force Unleashed games are considered canon, but they are really, really good games. And like I said, just as overall gameplay, a lot of fun. And then the Battlefront games that have just come out. I wasn't that impressed with the most recent Battlefront, not 2, but the first one that came out.
Sure.
Wasn't incredibly impressed with that one. I didn't like that there wasn't a campaign, and the multiplayer online was so to me.
Sure.
But
and with the game literally riding on online play, if that's not your thing, then
yeah, which I do like online play, but it wasn't anything special to me. It wasn't like, oh man, this is an amazing experience. But then I got Battlefront 2, and I really liked the storyline Battlefront 2. With Iden, the new character that they introduce, and the storyline, and then the gameplay, the multiplayer is really cool too. And they have this thing called Heroes versus Villains, where you have 4 of the main characters, one from the dark, one from the light, and they fight each other. I think one of them is like the target, and it changes as to who is selected as the target, and so.
So it's like a King of the Hill kind of thing?
Kind of. You have to defend the person on your team who's the target while trying to get the target for the other team.
Oh, okay.
So
like capture the flag.
Sort of.
But the flag
but with people.
You.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or slice you with a lightsaber.
Right. Well, what other... is there any other kind of like outside media that you recommend people? You said you listen to some podcasts. What are your favorite podcasts?
So the ones... and they've kind of evolved over the years, but... the one that I used to listen to the most was the Forcecast, and from what I understand, and I haven't listened to it for forever, but definitely, probably for the past, since before The Force Awakens came out, and probably even a few years before that, probably since like 2012, 2013. I listened to it 4 or 5 years, 5 or 6, I guess. So that's a good one. The co-hosts or the hosts for that show have kind of rotated over the years. And actually one who I believe started out on that show is Jimmy Mack, who is on the Rebel Force Radio.
Okay.
I don't know if you're familiar with that podcast, but it's probably the most well-known Star Wars podcast out there, complete with like they have sponsors and all this kind of, they're top of the line. So
sure.
So I listen to them a lot, and they're hilarious. I mean, they have like funny moments. They have Billy Mack, Jimmy's brother. He does like Lando Calrissian impressions and stuff. Nice. And so he was doing Lando pickup lines today. That's when I was listening.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
I'm sure those are. I'm sure if like. Especially if they know the universe real well, like I bet those are really
just
really
to spout off stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's funny to like listen to him try to get into character because he's sitting there and just like, how you doing, Chewbacca? Whatever. Still hanging out with this loser.
Han.
Han. Yeah. Yeah. So those are
trying to say Han. First time I saw that movie, I had to watch it like 3 times to figure out what he was saying while he was getting choked by Chewbacca. Like, what?
I know.
Trying to save who?
Well, especially like the first time you watch that movie, you're like, just let him talk.
Right.
He's trying to say something to help you. But those two are big ones in my mind, and they do a pretty good job of covering the news and keeping you up to date on Star Wars stuff.
Now, speaking of Lando Calrissian, and moving on to our sort of next topic, which is the future of Star Wars, coming up soon is Donald Glover playing Lando Calrissian in the Han Solo film.
Right.
Which is going to be, it's going to be in the history, it's back in time.
Right.
Han Solo's younger, because they had to get an actor who wanted to play him.
Right. Yeah, so, man, that is a tough gig. Well, actually, for either of them, for Donald Glover or Alden Ehrenreich for Han.
I think Donald Glover is a good pick.
Yeah, well, I just meant that's a tall order for anybody. Because
right,
I mean, think
Sam
about
Jackson would have been too old.
That's yeah, yeah. He'd be like, "Say, smuggler, one more time." But where are we going with this? Oh yeah,
Kessel, run! Do you run it?
Oh gosh, yeah. He'd be like, "There's mother snakes on this Millennium Falcon." So it's one of those things where it's really difficult if you get it wrong, you're probably going to be hated the rest of your career, right? Because
Sure,
you screwed up one of the most beloved characters of all time. So when I watched the trailers for Solo, my initial reactions about Han himself was that so he doesn't look like him, he doesn't sound like him,
Yeah.
doesn't even really have the same mannerisms, and so, but that's so in keeping with my Last Jedi mentality of, okay, I'm going to be challenged, maybe I just take it for what it's worth, and then maybe after I watch it,
come to appreciate it.
Yeah, well, and at the same time, it might be one of those things where, okay, in a trailer, he doesn't seem like him, but as you watch the movie, maybe it starts to grow on you, and maybe subtly he, kind of becomes that character to you.
Sure.
So,
well, young Han's like way different. Like we were talking about, like Luke being so much different. Young Han is all about like flashy, hotshot,
right?
Running the Kessel Run 12 parsecs, whereas old Han is like,
he's just a grumpy old man.
Really is.
Let's just be honest. In The Force Awakens, he's just a grumpy old dude.
He wanted to die. He knew it.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, he wanted to die in Empire Strikes Back.
That's true. Yeah.
But they decided to freeze him in carbonite instead.
So. I can only imagine what it took. Like, would you come back? Like George Lucas. Like, would really like to have you come back from Return of the Jedi. That's a conversation nobody could hear because George Lucas is.
That's true.
And then Hans, and then he's like, maybe if it's paid enough.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So for all the football fans out there, it's like Bill Belichick talking, in his press conferences. Have you ever watched Frank Caliendo?
Yes.
And his impressions? So he does it great.
Oh, it's John Madden is flawless.
Yeah, Madden's great, but then Belichick is great because he'll start off with like, normal words, and then it trails off into, and then they have subtitles at the bottom, and it says like inaudible.
Yeah.
Like that's it exactly. So
do we know anybody else that's getting their own solo film? And I don't mean solo film.
I think the popular opinion right now is that it's going to be Obi-Wan.
Yes.
That seems to be the popular opinion. Although I've also heard Boba Fett kicked around in the past before.
We heard Boba Fett well before we even heard about Han Solo.
Right. Yeah, that's been one that because I guess he's just sort of an icon of fandom. People have been asking for that for a long time.
I guess, but
do we really need to know though? It's one of those things where the more you know, is it as special anymore?
Look, we discovered who his parentage was, and I think we all regret that.
Yeah. It's kind of like, oh, it's the same person.
Well, but at the same time, Boba Fett and Captain Phasma are the same character, because in Empire Strikes Back, Boba Fett's only there for a few minutes and just kind of like makes a deal and like whatever. He doesn't really act like the badass that he is.
Right.
And then in Return of the Jedi, he does a few little things, but it's like, boom, Sarlacc pit.
Right.
Like it's real easy. Yeah. Whereas Captain Phasma's a lot of this, it's like, boom, trash compactor.
Yeah.
Oops.
That is a funny part in The Force Awakens. Is there a trash compactor? There is. But I was a little disappointed in how she went out in The Last Jedi. I was kind of hoping she would last till the end of the trilogy.
You think she's going to come back?
No, I don't think so. But, I don't know. Darth Maul came back and he got cut in half, so.
Yeah. Right.
Who knows?
Did you see? Speaking of the,
I have not gotten there yet.
I almost said Ewan McGregor. Speaking of the Obi-Wan film, Ewan McGregor, when they came out with that idea, like Ewan McGregor that day tweeted out, and he's like, "Hey, I'd love to reprise the role."
That would be great.
Yes,
so
please.
Obi-Wan's always been one of my favorite characters, but then on top of that, I felt like Ewan McGregor did a great job.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's kind of another one of those where he's just he loves the story, and so he's made it very public that, hey, if you ever want me to play him again, here I am.
Doors open.
So I think that's a great attitude, and
I mean, he's a great actor because he has all the clones of himself.
Yeah, that's true. And he's Christopher Robin. Did you know that?
Yeah. In the upcoming film. Yeah.
In the new Winnie the Pooh, he's Christopher Robin. So I'm actually intrigued by that. I saw the trailer for the first time the other day, and I was like,
I'll have to look it up because Ewan McGregor is like he's one of my favorite actors. I sat through I Love You, Philip Morris because he was in it.
Did you see The Island?
That's what I was referring to a minute ago when I said he had all the clones of himself.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good.
A little slow over here.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. But yes, I've only seen it once, and I remember lots of Michael Bay product placement.
It's the only Michael Bay film that I think is the middle ground. It's like watchable, but it's not too much over the top, I don't think.
Yeah, I liked the first Transformers. Probably all the ones after that I was not really a fan of.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Anyway. And then he was in Big Fish as well.
Yeah, so that's one that I heard was really good, but I did not get around to seeing that one. I would like to see it, though.
We should have you over for movie night again and change that.
Let me know,
that's
man.
One of my favorite films.
Just let me know.
It's great. So what about any other lesser known knowledge? You know me, I'm a trivia guy. So is there any kind of like trivia stuff that you kind of thought of?
So we may have talked about some of this stuff just in our trivia conversations, but I don't know if the listeners out there, some of them probably know. But when you asked that, one of the first things that came to my mind was just kind of some of the trivia from like so let's talk sound trivia.
Yeah, I love that.
So so Ben Burt, I mean, he's the man, right?
Yeah.
So he came up with all those sound effects. So you probably know this because you're into that, but so the lightsaber, he stumbled upon the sound effect for that because he had a unshielded microphone cable with him, and he was walking past I think it was a projector, and as he walked past, the electronic hum from that got picked up in the unshielded microphone cable, and he walked past it and it went like that, and he was like, "Wow, that sounds really menacing."
Yeah,
so he did it again, and I was like, "Man, that's really awesome." So they recorded that. So that is the lightsaber.
I thought you meant the initial like power on sound. I was like, that's a cool sound for a projector to make.
Well,
I want that projector. Every time you turn it on,
say, hook me up, get that one. But no, that was just the hum of the lightsaber. Was that?
I know about the blaster sound.
Yeah, so enlighten us.
So the blaster sound, as far as I don't know how he came about creating it, because who knows how these Foley artists discover the sounds they make. I've done a little bit of Foley, but I couldn't do what the professionals do. Like,
I mean, that's crazy.
It's a different level. But the way you get that famous like blaster sound, like from the stormtroopers in the original trilogy, is they had a slinky and a plastic solo cup, which I think is still ironic that it's a solo cup. And then all you do is you kind of like flick the slinky, and the cup acts as like a megaphone, and you're getting the slinky sound of it.
Right, and so they probably had like different effects, because one that I also know from the blasters was like the big guide wires that they have on like telephone poles and stuff that like hold it into the ground.
Yeah, that too.
You would tap those and just
that's what it is. You're right. It is that. But the slinky is a way to make it as
like a
DIY kind of thing.
Right.
If you don't have a telephone pole in your...
Well, now I know. Now I'm going home and doing that. So.
But yeah, it's like you said, it's the guide wire that comes down from the pole. That as a kid had the yellow thing, and you tried to shoot the yellow thing up the pole as far as you could.
Exactly. So
there's no way I was the only one that did that.
The TIE fighters, that noise of them flying is a slowed down elephant.
What?
Elephant's call. I don't know what you call it.
That might be my favorite sound in the Star Wars franchise for some reason.
It's pretty iconic. Yeah, and then they have the So Chewbacca is a combination of several different animals. I think like a yak and like a bunch of
definitely a bear.
Yeah, I think it's a bear, yak, and one other thing. I can't remember.
Hippo?
Maybe.
I don't know.
And Darth Vader's mask was a scuba mask that he recorded.
Nice.
And
the same convention I went to that Timothy Zahn was at, there was a panel all about Foley and the sound effects in Star Wars, and I caught the last like 5 minutes.
Oh man, that would have been awesome to sit in on.
But he was talking when I came in. He was talking about the AT-ATs in Empire Strikes Back and how you get that like the sound of the legs moving. Well, part of that is literally throwing chains on the ground to get part of that step down sound or whatever.
It's so cool to know how they come up with this stuff, but it's not like anything special. It's like average everyday stuff.
That's why I said like there's no way I would ever be able to do that job.
Yeah, and they just alter it or slow it down or change the pitch or something like that.
Right.
And it's just
what
really
if we got this lizard and made it croak in the microphone
and then slowed it down.
And then suddenly it's like
yeah, exactly. So there's that, and then the latest one that I heard is that the Porgs, their call is actually I think a altered turkey call. I think they brought one of those in and we're just playing with it.
Yeah.
And
what do you think about the Porgs?
Oh, I mean, I think they're great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're
great addition to the universe.
They're fantastic and great plush for the kids to get. And as a matter of fact, it's funny. I think I probably encourage it more than I should because it's funny. I like put it in bed when they're going to sleep, and then my daughter's like, "Why are you putting the Pog in here?" So,
is your daughter British? She have a British accent?
She has her own accent.
Okay.
I'm telling you, it's like one of those things where she's 4 now, but when she's
completely isolated from the area in which she lives.
When she's 10, I'm probably gonna still be talking like that, even though she doesn't talk like that anymore. Just like holding on to that,
Kind of like how you give your animals voices.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're a good dog.
right.
Yeah.
I know the Porgs. Speaking of trivia stuff, I know the Porgs were put in the film because the island they were filming on was full of dodos. Not dodos. That's dumb. Puffins.
They're dead. Dodos
are right. That's why I was like, it's not that.
Puffins. You're right. Yeah.
Which are endangered. That's why I was thinking. But anyway,
when I hear the word puffin, I think about, hey buddy, you want to pick some snowberries? Not now, Arctic Puffin.
From
Buddy the Elf.
Right.
Elf. Yeah.
Elf.
Yeah.
But they, from what I heard, they couldn't interact with them like in any way, so they just CGI'd Porgs over them in the background. Yeah,
Rian Johnson was like, "Well, they're going to be in the film anyway. We might as well use them." So, we just change them like that, and then they and Chewie had a great relationship.
I think the most
after he got over eating them.
Right. I think the most unsettling part of the whole newest film is when Mark Hamill pushes on the belly of that. Of that beast and fills up his cup or something. Yeah,
so that part isn't disturbing in and of itself because it's like, okay, he's on this remote island. He's got to get nutrients from somewhere, or nutrients as Nacho would say.
Yeah.
Another great movie. Anyway, but it's the look on his face when he takes a drink and he's like, he gives Ray that look like, this is good stuff. And you're like, what? You just look like a creepy old dude.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. And another trivia. So when Luke, when he jumps over the little cavernous area over the water and spearfishes the big fish.
Yeah.
And he uses that big stick with the spear on the end to kind of catapult himself to the other side.
Right.
A dude really did that. So that is a stuntman who actually did that.
So it's not CG.
No, actually it was a stuntman who actually used a pole to vault to the other side.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
I like when J.J. Abrams before they released The Force Awakens, when it was still a lot of conjecture and stuff. J.J. Abrams came out himself and was like, "Now it's not just going to be a whole CG fest. We're going to mix in a lot of
the practical effects."
Yeah, the practical stuff, which. It's becoming rarer and rarer these days.
I thought it was great.
Yeah,
kind of harkening back to the old feel, and then we got Simon Pegg and his cameo. So
thanks to the junk dealer, right?
Yep, that's him. Yep, his name escapes me at the time, but yeah.
I know as far as some of the actors, some of the other stuff they've done, Carrie Fisher was Peter's boss in Family Guy for the longest time. She did a bunch of voice acting work too. Mm-hmm. Mark Hamill, obviously, still doing a ton of voice acting, most famously as the Joker in the Batman animated series, which, if you look up Talking Tunes with Rob Paulson, that's a great podcast, like, hosted by Rob Paulson, huge voice actor.
Right.
And he sits down with Mark Hamill, I think more than once, or I've heard Mark Hamill on several podcasts, like The Nerdist or whatever. And so he tells a story about going to his audition of the Joker and how he's just randomly just like laughing in the car different ways, just trying to figure out different stuff. And he played a cameo on the animated series as Sandman before he came on and got the role as the Joker, but had to actually redo all the lines because they had chosen somebody else. But when he came in and did the laugh of the Joker, they were like, That's the guy. Fire. Where's the other guy? Yeah, fire him. Send him a call, a voicemail.
Right. Wow. Well, that's interesting. I did not know that. Huh.
I don't think Harrison Ford has done any voice acting. I don't think he's done any.
I was trying to think of anybody else who's done stuff.
Anthony Daniels has always done C-3PO, even in the Christmas special, in television advertisements. Like, literally, it's always been the voice of Anthony Daniels. Same with Peter Mayhew, until being Chewbacca until this film. This was the first time that Peter Mayhew did not play Chewbacca.
Right. Sort of a passing of the torch. Kind of sad, but...
all the other actors had to do it too.
Yeah, Peter's getting kind of old, so he can't.
That's another one who really embraces the community, and he's on Reddit a lot, doing a lot of like AMAs or. Yeah, he's one of the celebrities that will just comment on something just randomly, and you'll see the username. It's Peter Mayhew.
Right. I think his handle is the Wookiee Roars or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, he's really embraced that. So the way he was hired was when George Lucas was auditioning for Chewbacca. George Lucas walked in the room, and before that, Peter Mayhew had worked in a hospital, I think.
Interesting.
I think they asked him to do a lot of things that were really high. So hanging signs, things like that. He's English. And so when George Lucas walked in the room as a proper Englishman, he stood up to greet him. And so as soon as he stood up to shake his hand, it was just like overwhelming to George. And he was like,
There's the guy.
That's him. I think he was almost hired on the spot.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So
from what I hear about the other actors initially, was they had two teams of people. Like, Lucas knew he wanted Harrison Ford. Mm-hmm. So when they were auditioning with the other members, Leia and Luke, I believe were the two, they had two different teams. And one team, like, they had to talk Mark Hamill into going to the audition. Mm. But he was on one of the teams of audition people, and it was either going to be A or B. Right. And they ended up choosing, obviously, Mark Hamill's team.
Right. And George said one reason he picked Mark is not just because he was a great actor, but good chemistry with... Carrie and Harrison. So
it's a shame that Harrison Ford doesn't like the character. I think he plays a fantastic Han Solo.
I think he does too, but I don't know that I would say that he completely dislikes it. But I think it's just one of those things where I think he seems like one of those actors where he kind of does his thing, and once he's done, he's just kind of done.
Sure,
he's not super sentimental,
right?
So
just looking for another paycheck.
Exactly. So, although apparently he's considering doing another Indiana Jones, so they're going to make an Indy 5 from what I hear.
Oh, you don't need that.
Yeah.
If we have another Indiana Jones, maybe we should just hire the guy who's playing Han Solo in the new film and have him be the new Indiana Jones.
Maybe it's like, but we've already done that. The young Indiana Jones. We've already kind of been down that path.
Wasn't that like an animated series, or was that?
It was a live action series. Was it like the 90s or?
But it was like a Disney Channel thing, wasn't it?
I don't remember. I actually didn't.
I've heard of it before.
I didn't watch it, but I remember it being there. So maybe in Indy 5 they'll harken back to religious relics and not aliens.
Hopefully. It's a little out of place. So I just thought of another question for you. As a Star Wars fan, tell the community once and for all, what is the proper way to watch all of the films?
All right. So this is an interesting question because I have had to think through this. And
this is like the biggest points of contention for
I
Star
know.
Wars fans.
And, somebody could probably tell me completely different and justify it, and I would be like, you're completely correct. But the way I would prefer to watch them is the order that they were released.
Okay.
Because, for most people, everybody knows who Luke's father is, regardless of if you've watched Star Wars or not.
Right.
Yeah. But
that's funny that, as a quick aside, I saw Fight Club for the first time like last year, right? Mm-hmm. And it's funny how the movie Fight Club, what's the first thing people always say when you mention the movie?
What's the one rule of Fight Club?
Yeah, you don't talk about Fight Club, right? Like that's the one rule. But it's also permeated like the plot of the film, right? So don't talk about Fight Club. Not only is it the rule in the movie, the first rule, but it's also like it's this like hidden rule of like don't really like seriously shut up. Don't
talk about it.
Right. Yeah. But Star Wars is the opposite.
Yeah.
Star Wars is like, somebody fell and it's like, I'm your father. Like it's like people look for an excuse to use Star Wars as a meme or something.
Yeah. So the order is going to be a little more challenging now with the spinoffs being introduced.
Okay, yeah.
But man, I haven't really put this into practice yet, but from listening to other people, it really has an effect when you watch Rogue One and then immediately watch Episode 4 right after that.
Okay.
Because you have that heightened emotion of Vader's just, sliced through all these rebels, and it's this tense moment. They've managed to get the plans off of the ship there, and make their escape, and it's all of this stuff that's come to a head there. And then you go right into him pursuing Princess Leia with the plans.
Right.
So I think that would work. I haven't tried watching them that way, but I think 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and then 7. But yeah, I would probably watch Rogue One before 4, perhaps. I would probably watch 4, 5, 6 if you haven't ever watched them before. I wouldn't watch Rogue One if you'd never seen Star Wars before.
It's not a great place to start.
But if you're a fan and you're already in the community, I would probably watch that one before 4.
I've heard many arguments about if you're introducing somebody to Star Wars, the way that you are supposed to watch the films, according to many fans, is 4, 5, and then 5, Empire Strikes Back has the line, Luke, I am your father, and that's the realization. So at that point, after 5, you're supposed to take the viewer back to watch 2 and 3.
Right.
But not 1.
Not 1?
No, there's not enough. The argument is that there's just not enough reason.
To someone who hasn't ever watched them before.
There's not enough reason to watch 1.
Okay. Except for you're missing out on 2 great characters, Qui-Gon and Darth Maul. Probably, whether you like the movie or not, probably 2 of the greatest characters.
Definitely one of the greatest lightsaber scenes ever.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
So you 4, 5, get the realization, Luke, I'm your father. Okay, who is the father? You go back and watch 2, 3 to discover who Anakin was. Then, okay, I'm caught up. I got this. Then you watch 6, 7, 8, and then you go have a few drinks because you've wasted your entire day watching Star Wars.
Yeah, I've heard some of those where it's like watch 4 and 5 and then 3 and 1 and
you're right.
Like you're all over the map and I'm like
right.
My head hurts now. But there's all different ways to watch it. That what I said is just the way I would prefer to watch it. But I mean, honestly, that's one of the cool things about Star Wars is whatever you prefer, whatever kind of works for you in the Star Wars universe. And Star Wars fans are usually pretty cool about that, accepting that each other and that kind of stuff.
Well, I think that's
not so much about The Last Jedi though.
Right.
That is like.
Well, that's part of the fun I think with Star Wars is that you can get creative with how you watch it, with how you view it. I think unlike some other franchises, I think Star Wars is one that's really bendy. Mm-hmm. That like.
Headcanon.
Right, yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of rules that apply in certain places that don't apply in other areas.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, so.
Yeah, it's been a cool thing for the Star Wars community, but yeah, I mean, I guess that's probably all I would have to say about That's all I got to say about that.
All right, so before we finish out, real quick, one thing we always ask people is if you were to get into Star Wars, and we sort of just answered this, but if somebody was to say, "Hey, Wes, I've never seen Star Wars," after you backhand slap them in the face, what would you recommend they do to get started into Star Wars?
First of all, I would not backhand slap them because I used to be that dude.
You show a lot more patience and love than I do.
Yeah. So, and people probably would have backhand slapped me as well. To get into Star Wars, I would almost say do that because to me,
you should watch the films in certain orders.
Yeah, and I would almost start with the beginning because that was Lucas's strategy. And for those who don't know, he actually started right in the middle of his story.
Sure.
When Lucas. And I don't mean that to insult anybody's intelligence, because the numbers are different. But it used to be just Star Wars, right? So when it first came out, it was just Star Wars.
Right. There wasn't Part 4.
Right.
Which is my favorite joke from the Blue Harvest Family Guy special. It's the very beginning where he's like, "Let's hear a story about Star Wars. Let's start with Part 4."
Yeah. So when he was trying to get his movie made. He was just really fighting with, the different movie companies and stuff like that. And basically he just went with, okay, I might just have one crack at this. And so this is what I'm going to start with. I'm going to start right in the middle at the most kind of the climax of the story and tell this part. And kind of in that same philosophy, if someone was just getting into it, I would recommend them to do the same almost. I mean, if that's where George Lucas was like, this is my one chance to tell my story. This is where I'm going to start.
Start with A New Hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I would say.
But start with the theatrical release, not the...
Yeah. Although, if you haven't seen it and you don't
That's
know
how
either,
I feel, at least. I'm definitely a big purist.
Yeah, so I've actually only seen them once in that version. And like I said, it was the guy who let me borrow the VHSs. And they were good. They were enough to kind of draw me in. But it's been so long, I probably don't even remember a lot of the differences. Although my wife did get me a record of the soundtrack to Return of the Jedi.
Nice.
And it has the celebration of the Ewoks.
That's the best one.
Yeah.
Love nub.
Yeah.
Each out. Nub nub.
So that's pretty cool.
If you don't know what we're talking about, you should look that up. So real quick,
good
because I have a memory attached to that song.
Okay.
So we moved out to California when I was 14, 15, something like that. And we go out to one of the public libraries out there. And this is about the time I start realizing that I could rent CDs from the library and then burn them on my computer and iTunes. And they're mine forever, and I haven't paid for them.
Nice.
So one of the CDs I picked up one time was the soundtrack to Return of the Jedi. And so the first thing I did, because normally I was picking up like a lot of Green Day CDs, and
I can't imagine you doing that.
Right. They weren't the best things to play for my parents in the car, so I didn't usually play those.
Right.
I wait till I get home. Like,
yeah,
let's play your CD.
Yeah. I'm listening to classical, Mom.
Right. What's that? I gotta turn off the Bach to, man. But so we're driving around downtown LA, trying to get home from the library we went to, or trying to do something, and we're listening to the Return of the Jedi soundtrack, and we're listening to the Ewok celebration. We have heard it enough at this point in the car trips that my mother now knows the lyrics to.
That's awesome.
To a bunch of Ewokese that's going on throughout the song, and proceeds to belt out the song with me and my sister singing, "Love Nub."
Yeah.
And the next thing we realize, we're getting off the freeway and we are not on the exit we need to be, and it is dark in downtown LA, and there's some people making some weird eyes at us because we are not on the right exit.
And you're singing that.
Yeah. So she was kind of like, "Hey, let's turn the radio off for a minute so we find out where we're going." So there's always it's one thing with me and my family always harken back to is that memory of driving around Santa Monica. And
yeah. No, I can see how that would be seared into your memory after that.
Especially if it's, a couple big guys standing at the hot dog stand going like, what are they listening to?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound like NWA.
Yub Nub.
It's a hot track.
I got you Yub Nub right here.
That's great. So anyway, as we're wrapping up here again, you lead a podcast called Pigskins and Pageantry.
Mm-hmm.
What's the background behind that name?
So we were trying to think of something that was dealing with. It actually was Jessica, Jamie's sister, who was on the podcast with me. She was actually the one who came up with the name, and it's a mesh of obviously Pigskins football, but then the pageantry and tradition of the SEC.
Gotcha.
Anybody who's familiar with SEC knows there's a lot of tradition, history, stuff like that to it. So that just sort of made sense. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
And it's weekly, or
so right now with football taking a break, we are only doing special episodes. We just did an episode like a week and a half or 2 weeks ago about National Signing Day, where
that was the one I listened to.
Yeah, where the kids commit to the schools, signing their letter of intent and all that stuff.
And there was recently a fiasco about all that. So if people are interested about the little fiasco that went on signing day, then they should definitely look up Pigskins and Pageantry, because there's a couple things that happened.
Signing day is always crazy time, and it's always fun to watch the families do their thing on that day too, and all the announcements and stuff. So it's a lot of fun. But yeah, during the season, it's been a weekly thing, and like I said. Usually what we do is we'll, kind of go over the previous week's games, talk about what happened, talk about the news of the week, anything else that's come out or anything like that, and then kind of as prep for the next week, talk about the upcoming games, kind of make predictions, just for fun,
Sure.
type of stuff. Although we do give each other a hard time when we're wrong. So
Yeah. I do love the banter you guys have,
Yeah.
because you're a big Georgia Bulldogs fan, and
Yep.
Matt is a big Tennessee Volunteers fan.
correct.
Volunteers? Did I say
Yep,
that right?
you got it, man.
Look,
You
look
got
at
it.
that.
Yeah.
And then the third one, what's her name?
So Jessie, she is a Alabama
fan.
fan. She's
Yes.
an Alabama grad, as a matter of fact. So, and Matt actually went to Tennessee for a while as well. So yeah, we have 3 different fandoms represented, and it's a lot of fun. So,
It's good that it's not like real heavy-handed one way or the other.
so we good-naturedly give each other a hard time from time to time, but yeah, it's all in fun, and we have a great time. So
Right.
and it's good in the sense that it's not like one-sided.
Right.
So we get a good mix of opinions.
Sure.
So
Matt's always got something snarky and funny to say,
oh yeah,
too.
good old Matt. Yeah, he's fun. He's funny.
But anyway, that's our episode on Star Wars. If you had anything you wanted to add about Star Wars, any kind of trivia that we missed out, any cool facts that you know about Star Wars, if you know Timothy's on and want to get him on the podcast, that would be
I do. No,
kinda
I'm just kidding.
cool.
I wish. So all I was going to leave with was just kind of saying that the future of Star Wars is very bright. We have the Solo coming up May 25th. So dude, that's right around the corner.
Yeah. Is it really that quick?
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I just check out.
We're going to have 2 Star Wars movies within 6 months.
That's crazy.
Of each other.
You think Disney Lucasfilm is trying to cash in like Marvel has?
Maybe. Although, even though they moved this one up, they're still going to, as far as I know, it's still going to be a December of 2019 release.
And that's going to be the next one.
For episode 9.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then whatever one follows that. But in addition to the spin-off, the A Star Wars Story movies, don't forget we have the trilogy directed by Rian Johnson, which is going to be totally separate.
That's been announced?
Rian Johnson has been contracted to direct, write and direct a trilogy completely separate. We're not really told what it's going to be about.
So like all new characters, new material, everything.
It's very possible. There's been a lot of speculation that maybe, a Broom Boy, the kid at the end,
Sure, yeah.
maybe it's about him. Who knows?
This could be this could really change the direction of Star Wars depending on how it goes, because if it's all new characters, this will be the first time, really, outside of probably a handful of novels and video games like the Unleashed or whatever, that we haven't strictly followed the Skywalker story.
Right. Yeah, and I think everybody's ready for that. I think that would be great. In addition to that, we also have, it's been recently announced that there's another trilogy by the Game of Thrones. It's a new TV show you were unaware about. The Game of Thrones creators.
David Benioff and D.B. Weiss.
That's them. They are going to head up another trilogy.
That I'm sold.
Yeah. So they're
Denny
going.
Offenweiss making Star Wars. I'm sold.
So it's going to be a trilogy, all of them, and then just like a week ago, we had the announcement of the live-action TV series directed by none other than Jon Favreau. So
yeah. Of Marvel Cinematic fame.
Yeah, and also directed Elf.
Did he really?
Yeah, he directed Elf, and he's the doctor in Elf. Remember how he gives Buddy the exam? And they have the little skeleton in there, and he's eating the little cotton balls and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
He's the doctor.
That's
who
hilarious.
announces to Walter that Buddy's his son.
You are the father! That's
Exactly.
what they should have done.
Yeah, he should have. So, so the future's bright. There's a lot of stuff, man. A lot of stuff going on. It's a good time to be a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, more and more stuff coming out.
Because it used to be back in the day, it was like, oh, man, Star Wars is done.
Yeah, it really was too.
Yeah.
In between films, you had published novels you could go to, but now we have the HeroClix, tabletop game. We have like tabletop story like D&D campaigns you can do. There's comic books, there's novelizations, there's cartoons, there's TV shows, there's podcasts.
Yeah.
There's probably audio dramas somewhere if you look for them. But yeah, there's a ton of content. It's one of the few franchises that really puts itself out there.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it.
Yeah, well, and just the amount that's being put out now. So in 2005, when I saw Revenge of the Sith in May 2005, I left the theater thinking, that's it. That's all Star Wars. That's going to be
That's
it.
all she wrote.
Yep.
Because even Lucas said it at the time.
Yeah,
Didn't
he's
he?
like, I'm done. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was.
Right.
So in that speech where he was giving Mark a hard time at the end, he was talking about how old they were getting. And he was like, but Mark's young enough. He can make a lot more. He can make a lot more movies.
Right.
But Mark was like, well, so can you. And he said, nope, I'm out of the game, and walked off.
And that's hilarious.
So Lucas, he's done.
End of discussion.
He is so done. So.
Well, speaking of being done, I think we're done with this episode.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming out over to my place to record it.
Yeah. Good times.
We'll have to have you back on for other stuff like coffee.
Yeah. Talk about coffee. Yeah. You name it, dude.
Because you said you work on base as a contractor, but your wife runs a local.
That is true. So if we have any listeners in the Warner Robins area or anywhere nearby in the Middle Georgia area, come by. It's Between Friends Coffee Shop and Cafe. We're on the corner of Lake Joy and 96.
And you guys actually have a Star Wars drink when you make it.
Yes.
I had to.
Yeah. Sorry, it took me a second there. Yes, we do have the Nguyen Du, and it's a Vietnamese coffee. Although
spelled.
Yeah. The Vietnamese way they spell it.
Nguyen, whatever.
Nguyen, I believe. And then Du.
Right.
So, although when Chris gets it, we call it the Mace Windu. So
yeah, it's delicious. Again, if you're in Warner Robins, go get a Windu because it's a tiny thing. It's like
it's the 8-ounce cup. It's espresso, condensed milk. It's good stuff.
It's delicious. I get the big one. I get a double shot of espresso.
Yeah, dude.
So I got to get up and get going.
Absolutely. And so come by, see us, have some coffee, say what's up.
You guys are at 96 in Lake Joy for the locals.
Correct. Yeah, we're in the same shopping center as Hibachi Express. Currently Butcher Shop, although they're going across the street very, very soon. And there's also a gas station there too, and
a juice shop,
and a juice bar right next to us.
Organic something.
Yep.
Something.
Yep. So come see us.
Oh, and real quick, once you get through Star Wars, if you haven't seen all of Star Wars, which I guess two quick asides. First is that when me and my wife were getting married, one of my stipulations was that she had to watch all of the Star Wars movies.
This is a requirement.
Absolutely, because as much of a fan I am why does that sound weird?
Sam I am?
Is that
as much as a fan as I am, maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. It sounds weird when I say it.
I don't know.
Of Star Wars. And I have been. I had all the spaceships and all the action figures and stuff. As much of I guess what I meant to say is much of a fan as I am of Nintendo and Doctor Who and stuff now.
Yeah.
I used to be a huge fan of Star Wars. I'm not as much anymore. But at the time, I told her, like, this is special to me. You have to watch all 6 movies before we get married. And she kind of drug her feet a lot, and until I threatened to cancel the caterer or something.
Wow.
And she's like, "Oh,
You're
okay,
a brave
I guess
man.
we'll watch that." Sometimes you got to take a risk.
All right.
Like Bullseye and Womprats in your T16
That's
at
right.
home,
Yeah, they're not much bigger than 2 meters.
Right.
I don't know what that has to do with this conversation, but
Well, once you're done, the other thing I was gonna say, once you're done watching all of Star Trek, you start watching Star Wars.
it's a star. It's a star.
Right. Once you watch all of Star Wars, you have to go watch the Robot Chicken special. And both Robot Chicken and Family Guy had 3 specials. Yeah. But only the first one of each is really worth watching.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I don't really even remember too much about the other Robot Chickens because the first one was really good. The other 2 not so much. But I remember Seth Green talking about the scene where the Emperor is talking to Vader.
Yeah, on the phone.
On the phone. He said that they worked so hard on that scene and so long that he noticed. If you look really hard on the desk, there's like little specks of dust that move around, because they're doing the captured,
stop motion
capture, whatever. And so he's like, if you watch, you can watch the specks of dust move around as they've been, moving things,
shooting the scene so much.
So sure enough, if you go back and watch it, he's right.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So. I heard Seth Green talk one time about how he has literally the best job in the world. He says it still blows his mind that he can be as serious as he is when he gets mad at somebody that the action figure they picked up at a local thrift shop didn't have a special sticker on it because that's the one he needs for the skit.
Exactly. It doesn't get much better than that. So.
Oh, and to tie it all together, speaking of action figures and things, Mark Hamill hosts a show about old action figures and almost like... Antique Roadshow, but for action figures.
Yeah. Does he appraise them? He's like, this is worth a lot of money.
Right.
I don't know why he gave him George Lucas's voice, but
take this down to Tossie Station and see what it's worth.
They got some powder converters.
Anyway, that's it for Star Wars. Finally, I'm done. Unless you had anything else.
Nope, that's it.
All right, man.
And, yeah.
Well,
someone you have would say,
live long.
I had to do that.
Live long and prosper, folks.
Yeah. Have a good one.